As the sun rises from the Arizona desert floor, the signs of spring are upon us. So too are the questions that surround the 2014 Cleveland Indians. Gone are the recent familiar faces of disappointment, replaced by the mysterious faces of youth and potential. Starting pitching continues to be question number one. Who will solidify the back end of the rotation? Will John Axford nail down the closer's role? Is Carlos Santana the Tribe's third baseman of the future? And were the 92 wins and wild card berth of last season a tease for what lies ahead this year? We won't know these answers until long after the sun has set on Goodyear, Arizona. From the Cleveland Indians spring training home in Goodyear, Arizona, we welcome you into the 2014 Cleveland Indians season preview. Hi again, everyone. I'm Matt Underwood alongside Rick Manning. We're going to look back at 2013 and also get you ready for the 2014 Cleveland Indians baseball season. And Rick, last year was quite a remarkable turnaround from 90-plus losses to 90-plus wins. It was amazing.
And from day one, Terry Francona set the stage. He walked into spring training, seemed like he changed the total attitude of this ball club. They had a few new players they signed as free agents, but Terry had a lot to do with it.
Well, let's check out what's on tap for today's show. Terry Francona tells us how his team got to the postseason, Nick Swisher on why he's excited for 2014, and more on the Carlos Santana to third base experiment. But first, let's look back to 2013. Every team that makes the playoffs has to have good starting pitching. That was a big question mark going into the season for the Indians, but eventually they answered a lot of those questions with some new faces in the rotation.
Well, the starting pitching was unbelievable. Going into it, they thought the bullpen was going to be the best, but Justin Masterson, the leader of this staff, stepped forward, developed his slider, and really had the strikeout pitch working, was able to get left-handers out. And then Corey Kluber, a guy who I think has some of the best stuff on this whole team. He's got 4 quality pitches. He took a step forward and really solidified himself in the rotation. And Danny Salazar, a guy that came up in July with an explosive arm and the ceiling, no telling how high it can go because he only had about 10 or 11 starts, but this guy can be fantastic.
Add to the mix Zach McAllister and others, and the Indians had quite a recipe for success. But it all goes back to the ace of the staff, Justin Masterson, who really emerged as a leader last year.
Anytime you're a leader, you lead by serving, and so we're all in it together. It's not like I have a greater knowledge than anyone else. I look at things one way, other guys look at things another way. So we can bring that all together and be able to work through the problems that may arise. And we may not always agree, but that's more or less why I think it kind of works well.
In addition to how good the starting rotation was last year, the Indians' bullpen was no slouch either. We're going to hear from new Indians closer John Axford coming up a little bit later in the show. But when you think back to a year ago, Cody Allen, he went from a top-flight prospect to a guy who emerged as a go-to guy for Terry Francona late in the ballgame.
In 12, when I first got called up, there was, I wouldn't say like doubt, but maybe just a little uncertainty, just because you never really know.
There's an unknown, isn't there?
You never really know until you have a good amount of innings. And so there was always that uncertainty. There was even that uncertainty, going into last year. And I'd say that kind of uncertainty's gone, but there's always adjustments to be made because guys are going to make adjustments to me, and I'm going to have to make small adjustments back just to kind of stay ahead of them. It's a game of cat and mouse.
Rick, in addition to Cody Allen, who are some other guys that come to mind who really stepped up for the Indians last year in that bullpen?
I like Brian Shaw, who came out, the right-hander's got a cutter slider, did a terrific job for Francona coming out of that bullpen. I mean, he really stepped it up. Mark Zubchinski, after the trading deadline, or right before the trading deadline, stepped up, and he, as a left-hander, really came out and gave him what he needed, gave the Indians what they needed, and you would like to have 2 left-handers coming out of the bullpen, so there will be a battle for that second one coming this year. And I think a big key this year for the bullpen is going to be Vinny Pastano. If he can bounce back like I believe he can, if this guy comes back to his old form, this bullpen can be awfully tough.
Speaking of awfully tough, the Indians lineup last year ended up 4th in the league in runs scored. They were potent because you never knew where it was coming from. It was a lineup that had power throughout. It was a lineup that had pretty good batting averages throughout, And so it was a lineup that had just overall very good balance. And it starts in the outfield for me because you've got Michael Brantley in left field, who became a tremendous player last year, rewarded with a long-term contract extension. And then you've got Michael Bourn, the igniter. First year in the American League, so obviously there was an adjustment period. But Michael Bourn, without a doubt, a big key to the Indians' success in 2014.
Experience is always a plus for me, and I know the league a little bit better this year. But I always say baseball is baseball. It is good to know the pitches. You know how the ball breaks out the hand and stuff like that. But all in all, I just want to try to be better this year than I was last year.
Rick, we'll hear from David Murphy, the new right fielder, coming up later in the show. But this is a pretty good outfield.
Well, this is an outfield you're not looking for power from. These guys can play defense, they can run them down, they can throw the baseball, they can steal bases, but they're going to go out there, they're going to play every day, and they're going to get key base hits. Michael Brantley, one of the best clutch hitters on this ball club, if not in the league. And then you got Michael Bourn, who was getting used to the league last year. And I'll tell you what, this outfield goes out there, they're very competitive, and you have more than 3 guys that can play. You got probably 4 or 5 outfielders on this team.
Everyone always says you want to be strong up the middle in baseball, and the Indians' keystone combination in the middle of the diamond is Drupal Cabrera, Jason Kipnis. Defensively, they were tremendous last year. And offensively, while Cabby's year might not have been up to standards, still very good, and he was good down the stretch.
Well, for him, it wasn't up to standards. He's usually a very good clutch hitter and has been in the past. This is going to be his free agent year. Look for big things from him to come back and respond and have a very good year. And the ceiling for Kipnis, no telling how good this guy can be because he really took it up a notch last year.
Yeah, and Jason said one of the keys to last year, they learned as young players how to weather the cold spells as well as the hot streaks.
The media, you guys hate us saying, no, it's a long season. There's a lot that can happen in 162, and you guys are like, oh, it's cliche and all that stuff. But you realize how many up and downs there are. That you're labeled as a team that can't hit with runners in scoring position, and next year the top hitting team in the league the next month. There's just so many things that can go back and forth on. But I thought we learned that this group is resilient. That this group can win games.
Rick, one of the more surprising developments of a season ago was the emergence of Yan Gomes as the everyday catcher on this ball club.
Well, he was the guy that was added to the trade of Mike Aviles. And then he comes over here, and the next thing you know, 1 year later, he is going to be the everyday catcher. It was a total surprise. The guy can call a game, he can throw, he's outstanding at throwing out base runners. He turned out to be a very good hitter as well.
Yeah, he put up big numbers, even though last year was truly a learning experience for Yan Gomes.
I soaked in a lot of things last year. I learned a lot from my defensive game to pitch calling and just learning how to handle myself. Tito made it a huge point on me towards the second half of, in a way, kind of giving up your at-bats. I got to worry about a pitching staff now. I'm not going to have to be a little selfless and just forget about myself.
The offseason for the Indians, Rick, was really a lot quieter than it was the season before, and for Tribe General Manager Chris Antonetti, that's a good thing.
We come into spring training this year at a very different place than we were last year. I think we've got a much better sense of what we have. We've seen this group play together and play very well together for a year, and now we're trying to build upon that.
How important was it a year ago to fill the needs that you had? Because this year it looked like the off-season market, it was a seller's market more than anything because the prices went through the roof.
That was a big part of our strategy last offseason, is we were looking to find players that not only fit for our 2013 team and made us more competitive, but guys that could impact us in 2013 and beyond. And we're really fortunate to have those guys still on our roster. They were a big part of our success last year in making the postseason, and will hopefully be a big part of our postseason team this year.
All right, take a look at this. Yan Gomes, Nick Swisher, Jason Kipnis, Carlos Santana, Michael Brantley, Michael Bourn, all locked up until 2017. Now, there are options on a couple of these guys, but Rick, that tells you, and if you look on the pitching side, Kluber, McAllister, Salazar, Carrasco, Bauer, all here until 2017 as well. So you want to try to keep your core together as long as you can, and that's obviously the plan.
Well, a mid-market team has to do that if they want to try to become successful. You can't afford to lose your players. It's nice that you can tie up your core players, and they're going to be here a while, and these guys want to stay here in Cleveland because they like the situation.
Now, as always, you want to take a look at the competition in the American League Central Division, and I think it's just a division that continues to get better. Tigers, still the team to beat. Royals, they got better. You know the Indians are going to be right there in the mix. The Twins have brought a lot of pitching on board this year as well. As you take a look here, Rick, Interesting with the Tigers, though, because Prince Fielder, gone. Doug Fister, gone. Two key guys, Ian Kinslerlow and Joe Nathan, added. How do you think that bodes for Detroit?
Well, they have the big payroll, but they're also coming back with the Cy Young Award winner and the MVP, and they have those guys coming back. They're talented. They're awfully good. Last year they didn't have a closer, so to say. Supposedly this year they do. You know they're going to be good. They're going to be the team to beat, as they have been for the last 3 years, so you just got to go. And the Indians have to play against them much better than they did last year.
Always tough in the American League Central Division, regardless of who matches up head-to-head, with so many matchups throughout the 162-game season. Coming up next on the 2014 Indians season preview, how David Murphy's daughter broke the news of his off-season signing.
The people around the school knew well enough to know that I had been with the Rangers for a while, and they kind of looked at one another, and the word spread a little bit.
And what Terry Francona thinks the key to getting back to the postseason is. Like last year, just have a chance in September. Give us that last month to be in the mix.
It depends. I mean, if we're 10 games up in August, no.
Rayburn swings, drives it deep left field. It is gone to Souvenir City, and the Indians win it.
You know, Cleveland's a team I feel like that in Texas, we had success against throughout the years. And then last year, you know, I don't remember what time of year they came to Texas, but they played us well. They beat us 2 out of 3. Then we go to Cleveland later in the year and they sweep us. And you could just sense something different about the organization.
Welcome back to the Indians 2014 season preview show. Obviously, David Murphy, who you just heard from there, was a big off-season signing for the Cleveland Indians. Another big acquisition, though, came at the back end of the bullpen where they needed a man to step into that closer's role.
Well, that sets a tempo for any ball club and for any bullpen. You have to have that closer, and then he makes everybody else's job that much easier. Hopefully John Axford can get back to where he was a couple of years ago, because he has the stuff. He's got a mid-90s fastball, he's got a great curveball, he can throw a slider, but this guy is very capable of being the closer.
Axford was with Milwaukee, then traded to St. Louis at the end of last year. What drew him to Cleveland?
A lot of different things about Cleveland. You know, I think the initial response from me was the fact that I was going to be able to have an opportunity to close. There were a few opportunities out there for me to do that. I really wanted to get a feel for the team, for the organization, the city, the clubhouse, the managers, the coaching staff, everything. So when I actually talked to Tito on the phone, he answered all those questions in about 5 minutes. You know, whether he actually got to my questions or to the answers that I needed, it was just about his attitude and the way he felt. I could just tell how passionate he was about the guys in the clubhouse and how great he felt about the team, the organization.
Of course, the other big acquisition, David Murphy. He will be the Indians' regular right fielder, but obviously Ryan Rayburn will get some time out there as well. I thought it was interesting in talking with Murphy, just how the news of him signing with the Indians got out there to the public.
This is obviously a great moment for our family, and so my wife and I, you know, sat our kids down and told them. My kids are 6, 5, and 3, and the 5-year-old is in preschool 2 days a week. It was right before Thanksgiving, and so they were learning about Pilgrims and Indians that day. And my daughter says, "Well, my daddy's going to play for the Indians," and you know, the people around the school knew well enough to know that I had been with the Rangers for a while, and they kind of looked at one another, and the word spread a little bit. And sure enough, it ended up on the internet, and the whole world knew about it. And it was kind of crazy at the time, but it ended up being a really funny story.
Here are 3 things you need to know about David Murphy. He was a former first-round pick of the Red Sox in 2003. He's appeared in 27 postseason games with the Rangers, and he's a .365 career hitter in Cleveland.
You gotta like that. It seems like every time that we played the Rangers, Murphy came up and did a nice job. I think he got out of his realm last year trying to hit too many home runs. If he comes back and just as a spray hitter and uses the whole field, he'll be just fine.
Now, the guy who has to meld all these pieces together is the 2013 American League Manager of the Year, Terry Francona. I had a chance to sit down with the skipper and get his thoughts on the upcoming season. The game is over, and the Cleveland Indians have punched their ticket to the playoffs with a 10th straight win, the longest win streak to end a season in franchise history. In baseball, we all know that momentum is next day's starting pitcher. Having said that, what you built last year, How do you build off of that, use that momentum without paying too much attention to the past?
That's a good point, because you're taught, and we all believe that what you did not only yesterday but last year is in the rearview mirror. I do think, though, when we go through tough times this year, as we will, that the guys will understand that we can persevere, we can move on, and we can still be successful. I remember last year's, the first month when we get punched in the stomach, I felt like there was a little bit of, uh-oh, here we go again, as opposed to now the guys understand we can get through this and we can still get where we want.
Yeah. How fun was it for you as a manager, as a leader of men, as a teacher, to see the young guys like Kipnis, Cabrera for that matter, Santana, who had been through the really tough times, to see them kind of turn that corner and say, hey, you know what, we can do this.
And then we were going through that last couple of weeks with guys like Kluber, McAllister. They'd never been in it before. And it was really fun, because we felt like, to a person, we could win with those guys. And nobody was backing off, nobody was giving in. It was fun. It makes it even better. When you grow to trust your guys, that doesn't guarantee you're going to win, but it makes it a lot more fun.
In this day and age in pro sports, it's kind of rare to see a true team. And that's something that you had last year. And I'm curious, is that something that you personally, can you have a hand in creating that kind of chemistry, or is that just something that happens?
Well, I think we as a staff, we try really hard to kind of have an atmosphere where guys want to do the right thing. Saying that, then you got to have the guys. And they have to buy into the team first. Everybody wants to play. We know that. But you got to have guys that are willing to accept maybe not playing when they want to, not being a divisive factor, even to the point where they're helping when they're not playing. We have guys like that.
Is there an element of your team, is there an aspect of your team you say, for us to get to where we want to go, this group of guys has to get better, they have to improve?
Anytime you're trying to get good in a baseball season, you have to pitch, and you have to pitch consistently. And the only thing that where I have to be a little hesitant is our guys haven't done that. You know, Masty has, you know, but we love Kluber, we love McAllister, we love Salazar, but they haven't done it. You know, you look at Verlander and Scherzer and Sanchez, they've done it from year to year to year. They kind of know what to expect. So you have to kind of temper your expectations, but we love them.
Is it oversimplifying it to say, we just want to be like last year, just have a chance in September? Give us that last month to be in the mix.
It depends. I mean, if we're 10 games up in August, no. But, I mean, again, we know, you know, Detroit's good. Kansas City, I think, I'm surprised Kansas City's people aren't talking more about them, because they're hard to play. It's not going to be easy. I don't think we expect it to be easy, but we really like our guys and we trust them. And it may not always work, but we'll get through the tough times together and we'll try to figure it out where we can get to the finish line.
Rick, you've been around the game a long time. You've seen a lot of different managers, a lot of different styles. What do you think makes Francona successful?
He communicates with everybody so well. I don't care if it's a clubhouse guy all the way up to the president of the company. He can communicate with anybody, and he treats these guys as men. He lets them, he holds them responsible for what they have to do. And you know what? Man up. And he treats you like a man. So if you can't play for Terry Francona, you can't play for anybody.
Coming up later in the show, we're going to hear from Nick Swisher, who also signified a big culture shift in the Indians clubhouse this year. Spring training, yeah, it's a little bit different. A very loose and relaxed atmosphere. You got Terry Francona riding his scooter to the ballpark, guys doing cartwheels. You never know what you're going to see when you come out here to Goodyear, Arizona for Cactus League action. However, it doesn't mean they don't get their work done. These guys do work hard, and there's a lot of things that go into getting a team ready for a baseball season. Here's some of the sights and sounds from spring training.
Old habits, Trip, old habits. Oh, yeah. Are you going in? You want to go in the locker room? Come on, little dude, let's rock it. Personal chauffeur right here, guys. Personal, just carry whatever we need. Come on, we gotta build them forearms up. How about the Indians? We're not real into the Red Sox anymore. Who's next, youngest? I am. I'm the oldest. You look young. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, Rick, every year during spring training, we know that there are only 25 guys going north with the ball club to start the season. But, you know, when you got almost 60 guys in camp, there are guys here trying to impress, trying to open some eyes so that should the need arise down the road, they're the guy that's, you know, on your mind, on the tip of your tongue. Who are some guys that you've seen in camp that have really stood out and maybe grabbed some attention?
Well, the nature of the beast now is you get invitees that have to come to camp, and they, you know, they could be on their last ditch effort. Nigel Morgan won, who's a center fielder, and he's about 35 years old. For him to make the team, he'll probably need an injury, but this guy has come out and he can play center field. He's one of those guys that has been around and has been a successful player at the major league level. Vinny Pastano, I like Vinny who's coming out. He really has something that he has to prove. He's got to prove to himself, I think, first and foremost, than he does to anybody else, but he wants to get back to the level where he was at, and he looks very good. And Francisco Lindor, I mean, a guy that he's not going to be on the team this year, but maybe 1 year from now, he'll be getting the at-bats early in the game as opposed to late in the game. Here's a guy that could be definitely part of the future of the Cleveland Indians.
Another guy for me is Carlos Moncrief. I mean, here's a guy who's a former pitcher, and they've turned him into an outfielder, and he made a couple of spectacular catches in our first spring training telecast this year. You know, he's a guy who's definitely intriguing down the road for the Indians. You talked about Francisco Lindor, and he's a former #1 pick. You were a former #1 pick. There's expectations, internal, external fans wondering, when's he going to get here? He's not that far away.
No, he's not. Defensively, he could play here right now, and it's just a matter of time until he gets to the big league level. Will his bat transfer to big league pitching? We'll have to wait and see.
I'll tell you one thing, I was really impressed. I had a chance to sit down with Francisco Lindor, very thoughtful and very determined young man. Oh, terrific. Francisco Lindor with a terrific flip. Wendell turns 2, and the Tribe's out of the inning. So I'm thinking to myself, 3 years ago, you're getting ready to graduate from high school. And now you're one step closer to realizing your dream of getting to the big leagues. What's this experience been like for you?
It's been awesome, man. It's been a blast. I've been enjoying every single second of it.
Do you think to yourself, some of the guys you were in school with are in college still, and you might be in the big leagues this year, maybe?
One of my best friends, yeah, he's in college. He's a junior now. But even though he's in college, I still, like, when I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm supposed to be a junior. Like, junior in college already is just insane.
What does being in big league camp do for you in your development as a baseball player?
It makes me realize how everything works in the big leagues, how the guys go about their business, how they act in the clubhouse, how they act outside, and like that's very important for me. Like I wanna make sure I'm a good teammate. I wanna make sure I'm a great family member, great son, hopefully one day a great father, and I just wanna make sure I do everything, try to do everything right.
How much do you learn by just watching and listening, and how much do you learn by asking questions and picking their brain?
I mean, I ask questions, of course, I always ask, but like I try to just listen and watch a lot. Growing up, I was always like that kid that he watched a lot, and like I just learned from watching. Because I always, like, growing up, I remember watching Alomar, watching Vizquel, watching Jose Reyes when he was, like, in New York big time. Derek Jeter, Tulowitzki, watching them play, and, like, it was just, like, I always, like, picked something from each and one of them, watching a dribble, and, like, I still do it.
What makes you Francisco Lindor? What makes you special?
Feel my character, I try to be as most, like, genuine as I can. I try to be very genuine. I mean, I just try to be happy and help my teammates, just not by like thinking I know more than them, just by, you know, good morning guys. How are you today? And I'm always smiling, always, no matter what I'm going through, I always try to smile, always try to have fun.
You've obviously put a lot of thought into your development as a person and as a ball player. When did you first think, I want to play in the big leagues? Do you remember how old you were when you said, I want to be a big league baseball player?
I was probably, I'll say, 7, 8 years old. I didn't call it the big leagues. I call it, I want to play on TV. That's what I always said. I told my dad, told my sister, my mom, I was like, I want to play on TV. I want to be on TV. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be doing that. I wanted to play on TV.
All right, coming up next on the 2014 Indians season preview show.
Let's be honest, man. You win a championship in Cleveland, I mean, you're going to be a god forever.
We're going to go one-on-one with Swishalicious. Nick Swisher joins us coming up next. Well, that's going to leave it up to Jason Giambi. Giambi's had so many big moments in his career, and he had one of them earlier this year against the White Sox.
Love to see one of those.
Reed ready, 1-1 pitch. Giambi with a drive! Deep right field! Are you kidding me? Oh my! The Indians have won it! Their 11th walk-off win of the season, and none more dramatic than this one right here, right now. Rick, I mean, for me, and obviously because it comes late in the season, September 24th, you know, down the stretch, the Jason Giambi home run was really sort of a moment in time that just expressed what the 2013 Cleveland Indians team was all about.
And I don't think anybody could have been happier than the whole team for Giambi to hit that home run than anybody else on that team. He might not have played every day, but he was the heart and soul of that ball club, and he meant a lot to these guys. So for him to do it, it really was a special moment for the Indians.
In the clutch in a pinch hit roll. What a moment for the Tribe. Right now, let's head over to Ken Rosenthal for the Rosenthal Report.
I'm not quite sure what to make of the Indians. They're coming off a stirring wildcard appearance, a breakthrough 92-win season. It's entirely possible that the offense will be better than it was a year ago, particularly if Carlos Santana proves capable of handling third base. My concern is the pitching. It's no secret that the Indians lost 2 prominent starters, Ubaldo Jimenez and Scott Kazmir, and 2 prominent relievers, Joe Smith and Chris Perez. The bullpen, with the additions of John Axford and Josh Outman, should be okay. In the rotation, though, there is an awful lot of pressure on the Indians' younger starters, and for that matter, on Justin Masterson, who is the sole veteran, but not really an ace. Don't get me wrong, the young pitchers have a ton of upside. But at some point, the Indians likely will need to trade for a starter, and the obvious piece to dangle would be shortstop Asdrubal Cabrera, who is a potential free agent and placeholder for one of the game's top shortstop prospects, Francisco Lindor. This is Ken Rosenthal from Spring Training. Back to you.
Thanks, Ken. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going one-on-one with the incomparable Nick Swisher. Okay, so 2013, it's a new start for you. It's a new start for the franchise.
Right.
What did you identify when you came in? I mean, everyone talks about Terry Francona changing the culture, but you and Giambi and Rayburn, the new guys, you had a hand in that as well.
Well, I mean, obviously I don't know how it was, previous years up until we got here, but I think kind of you start spring training off and you walk in, there's 15 new faces around. I'm sure Brantley and guys like Kip and Santana were like, are we on the same team? Completely different coaching staff. At that point, no one really, knows anybody at that point. So, we had to battle and develop that camaraderie and develop the identity of who we are now. I mean, it wasn't our goal to come in here and be a flash in the pan type of team. I want to come here and do my best along with this squad to help change the perception of this organization and how we're treated.
The up and down nature of a baseball season, even the best teams have their slumps. They go through their periods where you're not sure. But the 2013 Indians had some serious swings of momentum.
I mean, we had some serious, we had like the best losing streaks ever. We had the best winning streaks ever. It kind of was that emotional roller coaster. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at the standings and you see 92 wins, you're saying to yourself, wow, that's impressive. I think it was something like 69 the year before. That's a complete flop. And I think that just has a lot to do with the guys we have on the team and the personalities and characters we have and the willingness to go out there and fight.
Now, you've got postseason experience. You've been in the big moments and the big games. But for a lot of the guys on this club, they just got to wet their beak last year.
Just a little bit.
So you bring in the T-shirt this year, unfinished business.
Well, I kind of think that was kind of our motto, And we wanted to continue to keep going. I think at this point in the season, everybody's talking about, we're going to go to the World Series, we're going to win the whole thing. Well, it's a lot easier said than done. I think a lot of things have to go in your favor. But I think for us, I mean, we've developed something special here. And I think it's just, last year was such a great building block for us, you know, moving in the right direction, that we just want to continue to keep that going. We just want to be a contender every single year and just go out. Because let's be honest, man, you win a championship in Cleveland, I mean, you're going to be a god forever. So I think obviously that's the ultimate goal. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the World Series? It's the greatest sporting event on the planet. So I think obviously everybody wants to go. But, you know, I think for us, man, you know, we're working ourselves in that right direction for sure.
And you, like I said, you've been on good teams. You know, you've got an idea what it takes, pieces. When you look at this club right now, you know, where do you see the biggest need for improvement? And you know, what has to happen, fall in place for this team to get to where they want to go?
I mean, you know me, man. I'm a positive guy. I always like to look at the positive side. But I think just in general, I think, look where we were last year, and there was a handful of guys in the lineup that didn't have the years that they wanted to. So what happens if all those guys have the same years they had last year, and the guys that didn't pick their game up? I mean, that's a pretty nice lineup. I mean, I think what the front office is doing, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of this organization right now because it's so exciting. I mean, you know, we're wrapping up guys, man. We're giving the city something to put their arms around. It's not a guy's coming here for 1 year and then he's gone. I mean, prime example, you know, Michael Brantley just signs a 5-year extension. I mean, he's going to be here for 5 years. I think that's amazing. I mean, we got guys like Jason Kipnis, you know, guys like, you know, Yanni Gomes, who came on the scene last year and just absolutely just took it by storm. So I think there's just a lot of amazing things going on right now, and I think people need to pay attention to that.
Rick, one of the things that really has stuck with me after having spent a year now with Nick Swisher is that, you know, when you watch him from afar, you're not sure, is that real? Is that really who he is? And it really is. He's up, he's got the big smile, he's always on, and I mean, he's as real as they come.
That's the amazing thing. You're spot on. He really is, because I remember watching him in Oakland, in Chicago, in New York, and you see him from afar and you look at that guy and you say, you can't be like that every single day of the year. But this guy truly is.
I like the fact he brought the unfinished business t-shirts, passed them around to his teammates. Terry Francona still is mad at me because we were doing an interview the day Swisher passed out the t-shirts. He missed out on a free t-shirt.
Well, you know what? Because, I mean, they got their feet wet in the playoffs last year, and he doesn't want it to end right there. He's going to come out right at the start of spring training, give out the t-shirts, let's go. We didn't finish what we started, and you know what? Get your mind right back into it from day one of spring training is a good deal.
As we go to break, some of the most memorable moments from 2013. Kipnis takes off. Swisher lines it right field line. Fair ball! Indians win it! Kipnis with a long fly ball, deep right field. Chavez back. It is gone! The Indians win it! On a 2-out, 3-run homer by Jason Kipnis. Gomes with a high fly ball. Left field. Back is Bay. On the track. At the wall. Goodbye! A game winner! Kipnis with a great stop, throw to first, got him! The game is over, and the Cleveland Indians have punched their ticket to the playoffs. Let the celebration begin, Cleveland.
We wouldn't have been where we were at the end of the year if we didn't have guys like Yan Gomes coming to his shoes, Rayburn off the bench with big hits, Brantley doing what he has done. Guys like that, where it's a different guy every night, where the pitchers can't just walk around one guy, well, hey, we'll put him on first and get the next guy when you have a deep lineup like that. That's tough to beat, and that's a good recipe for winning.
As you just heard right there from Jason Kipnis, one of the hallmarks of the ball club a year ago was its versatility. That's not by accident, folks. Terry Francona is looking for players who are versatile, but here's the key, Rick, and you and I both know this. You have to be able to play. And it's one thing to have a guy on your bench, but if he can't do the job, if he can't really contribute, he's just taking up space. And Terry's got players who, when their name is called, they step up and they deliver.
That's why Terry Francona likes veterans, because it's so much easier for veterans to come off the bench and perform, because they realize, hey, they're not in their day in the sun is gone. They're here to specialize and do certain things. The Goon Squad, as they were called last year. You got Giambi, you had Aviles, you got Rayburn, and Gomes started earlier in the year. You need a good bench if you're going to be successful at the major league level, and Francona knows that, and that's why he treats those guys like they're regulars every single day.
Now, right along with that versatility comes the big story of spring training this year, Carlos Santana moving from behind the plate to third base. Now, he came up as a third baseman, but how tricky is this transition at this point in his career?
It's gonna be tricky, but you gotta respect Carlos Santana wanting to do anything he can for the team. So you gotta love that. He's going out there. He worked very hard in winter ball. I mean, this is something that if it works, it could be great. If it doesn't, he goes back to being a DH first baseman, and he can catch a little bit. So if it works out, there's really a lot of room for improvement.
Talked about Ryan Rayburn, part of the Goon Squad, and his versatility so important for this ball club. He'll see some time in right field. David Murphy's going to play out there, but Rayburn will get his at-bats in the outfield as well.
Well, as hot as he was last year, he had a couple of strings there where he was hitting home runs at will, and he went out there against left-handed pitching, and you know what? It just seems like Terry knows when to put guys in, when to give them a rest. He had some leg problems last year that kept him sidelined towards the later part of the year. It would have been better than that, but when you hit 15 home runs and 240 at-bats, that's pretty darn good.
And what's great about David Murphy, here's a veteran who's been around on very good teams, and yet he knows his role with the Cleveland Indians.
Hopefully I'm a winning piece. You know, I've had a chance to be a part of some postseason teams, some teams that have gone to the World Series. And it's not like I was the driving force behind any of those teams. And, you know, I'm fine with my role. I know who I am. You know, that's also a good thing at times. You know, a pitcher gets through the 3, 4, 5, you know, the meat of the lineup, and they might think they can take a deep breath getting down in the lineup. And, you know, that's when you might get a mistake and make them pay.
You know, Rick, no general manager wants to have to go out and replace more than one starter. I mean, if you have to replace one, that's understandable, a little easier to deal with. When you've got to replace multiple starters, that's a challenge.
Well, it is, especially when you're replacing 23 wins, 340 innings, and that's from Ubaldo Jimenez and also Scotty Kazmir last year. 3 agents signed elsewhere, but the opportunity is there. They have guys to replace them, but now it's these guys are going to have to step up and improve. And I mean, if they do, some exciting things can happen. If they don't, it could be a long year.
Yeah, and you got guys like Josh Tomlin, Carlos Carrasco, Trevor Bauer. Those are the young guys that are fighting for spots in the starting rotation and guys who the Indians are obviously counting on for the upcoming season. Well, a special addition to our Indians broadcast last year was the Phantom Cam. We had a lot of fun watching the great shots that the Phantom Cam brought you. Here are the best of the Phantom Cam. Coming up, we'll break down the lineup and make our predictions for the upcoming season. Back for the 2014 Indians season preview from picturesque Goodyear, Arizona. Well, it won't be long now, and the 2014 baseball season will be right here, and it'll be game on. And I think one of the most fun things to do for any fan is to play manager, because we don't have to take the bullets and the arrows that the manager has to. But, you know, it's always fun to say, if I was the manager, I'd bat the team like this. Rick, Terry Francona has already told us, look, the batting lineup, don't look too much into what I'm doing in spring training, because come opening day, the batting lineup might look a little bit different. But from where you sit, what do you think the Tribe's lineup will look like?
Well, it'll change, it'll float depending on lefty, righties, because remember, they have 3 switch hitters. And he can mix and match anywhere he wants, but you know Bourne's going to lead off. Okay, so you can put Swisher, a switch hitter, second. You can have Kipnis third. You can have Santana, the switch hitter, fourth. And then from that point on, you can go anywhere you want. You can have Brantley, who slides up and down the lineup from 1 through 9. He can do that. And then you've got Cabrera, another switch hitter that can float into that number 2 hole. It depends on how they're swinging, if they're driving in runs. You also have Murphy, Rayburn that can float in depending on left and right situations.
Right.
So
and that's what's important too, is because depending on what starting pitcher's on the hill, that can adjust the lineup.
Well, look at last year against left-handers. They were terrible the year before because they were a dominantly left-handed lineup. Last year they had the switch hitters. They got a couple of more right-handed hitters. They killed lefties. Yeah. So, I mean, he has options. How many, Cy Youngs did they beat early in the year last year?
All of
the first 8 that they faced. They beat 7 out of the first 8 they faced.
They're wearing them out early last season. Well, ultimately, what last season led to was a 1-game wild card playoff scenario. Ultimately, the Tribe lost. That was unfortunate, but you know what? I talked to a lot of the players down here, and just getting a taste of the postseason has them hungry for a whole lot more.
I mean, nothing right now compares to that wild card game in Cleveland.
The energy, the fun, the joy, the buzz that was created in Cleveland in general over the year.
Just walking out to the field, just kind of, it didn't feel the same, It was kind of like I could kind of feel my body a little bit, but that's kind of what you play for, You play for the big games.
Last year was such a great building block for us, moving in the right direction. We just want to continue to keep that going.
You hear about guys who go maybe like 8-9 years in the league and they never get to experience it at all, and granted we only got 9 innings, but to know a little bit of what that feels like now that's got to be your goal for every season from here on out for your career.
All right, now comes my least favorite part of the show, where we make predictions. Because generally, we're lousy at making predictions. It's so hard to predict what happens during the course of a 6-month season. Injuries, performance, up and down. It's a very difficult thing to do. But since they're holding us to it here, who's your breakout player this year? Maybe your Jan Gomes for 2014. Who are you looking for?
I'll go out and I'll say Corey Kluber. I think I'm looking for Corey Kluber to come up and have a big year out of the starting rotation. I think he made huge steps last year. Before he hurt his finger, he was well on his way. And I think he got a taste of it. He's got very good confidence. He'll come back and he could be, I think, a top of the rotation guy.
All right, in the Central Division now, you've got the Indians in there last year, just behind the Tigers, a game behind the Tigers. You know the Royals are going to be right there in the mix. Who do you think ultimately wins the Central Division?
Well, closing quickly, we're the Royals in the second half. They had the best record in baseball, I think, in the second half of the year. The Indians, they finished so well the second half of the year. Detroit's the team that's won it the last 3 years. They have the big payroll. They're going to be expected to win it. Now, predicting-wise, you can't tell. You have to stay healthy. Who's going to get hurt? Cabrera was hurt for the Tigers a little bit last year. He played through it. The Tigers are the team they have to beat. So until somebody unseats them, I'm going to say the Tigers are going to win that division.
All right, Rick, so if they don't win the Central Division, 92 wins got them into the 1-game wild card scenario a year ago. 92 wins do it again this year?
Probably. It was only the second time that 2 teams came out of the Central and made the playoffs. So you think 92. It all depends on what happens out west. Everybody expects the West to be better. And how many wins are they going to have when you have Oakland out there and you have the Angels and everybody picks the Angels? Who knows? The East could get it. It's going to be tough, but I would say 92 wins, you're in pretty good shape to make the playoffs.
All right, guys, as the old country saying goes, the hay is in the barn. It's time to go hunting. The season is upon us. We thank you for watching the 2014 Cleveland Indians Season Preview Show.